Hey guys, today I want to talk about how to choose good books. One of the things that people tell me a lot is that they don't read as much as they want to because they don't really know how to find books that are worth their time. All of us only have 24 hours in the day. We have a very limited amount of time that we can read, and we're rightfully afraid of wasting a bunch of that time on a book that wasn't really worth our time. And so one of the things for me is that when I look back through my Goodreads history, what I find is that on average, I'm rating books 4 out of 5 stars. And part of this is because, like, my mom will say, I'm a book huzzy. Like, I love books. I just love me some books, right? But part of this too is that I am able to really actually choose good books. Most of the books that I read are well worth the time that it took for me to read them. So I want to give you 5 quick tips that will help you in choosing better books that are going to be worth your time, that you won't have regret after having spent the time to read them. And you won't stop midway through and be like, this just isn't worth it, right? So let's jump into it. I'm going to give you 5 tips, 5 examples from each one. So tip number 1, find other book lovers. This is the best possible thing that you can do. The book that I have here is Present Over Perfect by Shauna Nyquist. This is a book, and this is an author who was recommended to me by my sister. We tend to think that in order to find another book lover who can recommend books to us, it has to be somebody like myself, who reads 100 plus books a year, right? It can't be someone who just, only has time to read 20 books a year or, whatever number you think is small, right? One of the things that I want to talk about with this is that my sister is super busy. Right? She has 2 little kids. She does not get to read nearly as much as I do, but she reads different books than I do. And so what that means is she'll come across books like this one or authors like this one that I would have never picked up. Shauna Nyquist. She is a woman who writes towards women. And I'm not against that in any way, but I just never would have been like, oh, hey, I want to try this book out. What you'll find is when you have someone who you trust as a person, right? When they say, man, you need to read this book, then you can come at it. And what I find a lot is that it'll bring me to books that I would never have gotten to otherwise. I never would have picked up Shauna. And the first book I read of hers was Cold Tangerines. And then I just went on this spree and just read everything. I was like, this is one of the best authors I've read in so long. I love this woman. Her books are amazing. And that would have never happened without that relationship to my sister. And so find people, regardless of how many books in a year they read, find people who love to read and ask them, hey, if you come across a book that you think I would like, tell me. Like, I'm always looking for good books, right? And you'll be amazed at what you come across, and you'll come across so many things that are so different than what you would normally have read. That's by far the number 1 tip. The best thing you can do is build a relationship with someone else who loves to read, and then ask them specifically, when you find something, please share it with me. Next up, segue from that, after I read Shauna's first book, I read every other book that Shauna has written because I was like, I love this woman. Why would I not read all of her books? And so same thing with this, I have Grant by Ron Chernow. I have read Ron's biography of George Washington and of Alexander Hamilton. And I know I love the way this man writes history. Both of those books are 2 of my favorite history books ever. They were incredible. And so why would I have any fear jumping into this one, which I haven't read yet? That's another one of the things that people kind of think like, oh, I might get bored if it's the same author, or whatever. That is just absolutely not the case in my experience. If you find someone and you read a book and you love it by them, get the next book of theirs. Find another one that they've written because you like them. This is one of the keys to making sure you don't waste your time. And it's not that you have to read everything that this person wrote in, the next couple of months, but you can have it just in the back of your mind of like, man, I know I love Ron Chernow. And if my to-be-read shelf is getting a little slim and I need to start looking for some stuff, I'm just going to see if Ron has a new book out because, gosh, dang, I love this guy. So find someone you love, ask for the recommendations. 2, read all the books by the same author. If you know you like them, read them. Okay. Number 3, we're going to read classics. There is a reason that classics are classics. There's a reason that these books have stood the test of time and have so many people who love them and admire them. Anna Karenina, I've heard over and over and over, this is one of the best novels ever written. This is quite possibly the greatest novel ever written in the history of man. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, what else? And then I finally get around to reading it, and I finish it, and I go, this is quite possibly the greatest novel ever written in the history of man, right? And so there's something to be said for books that have stood the test of time. This is not a blanket, anything that's considered a classic is good, or even is it anything is considered a classic you will like. I have read classics that I'm just like, I don't get it. I did not like that book at all, right? But the two things that come from reading classics is if you're approaching the world from more of a Christian mindset, what you'll find is that as you go older in books, that mindset and those values are much more prevalent across all of literature than they are today. And what you find is that most of the time, there's a reason that these books have stood the test of time. There's a reason that people still are reading them and loving them, and it's because they're really, really great books. So, number 3, read some classics. Look at a list of classics, and if anything jumps out at you, go for it. Number 4, pay attention to who is writing the blurbs on these books. Okay, this is a book I know nothing about. I read the title and I read the subtitle. Do Hard Things, Why We Get Resilience Wrong and the Surprising Science of Real Toughness. I'm like, okay, that's pretty interesting. Like that could be a good book, right? But a lot of times what we'll do is we'll read the blurbs, but we don't pay attention to who wrote the blurb, right? And this goes back to that first point of building a relationship with someone that I trust, right? And then Bliss recommends me a book by Shauna, and then I read all of Shauna's books. And then I find a book that Shauna has written a blurb on, right? And now, because of the experience that I have in that, I trust Shauna's blurb way more than other people's. So this book has a great blurb by Malcolm Gladwell, who is one of my favorite, just most intriguing authors of all time. It also has a blurb by Cal Newport, who wrote Deep Work, which is one of my pinnacle top shelf books. I love that book, right? It also has a blurb by Adam Grant, who wrote the book Think Again, which is another one of just my all-time favorite books. And so even though their blurbs may not be as exciting as someone else's on here, what you find is, oh, I know and I trust this person, and I've built a relationship with this author because I've read all of Cal Newport's books. And so if Cal Newport says this book is good, that's good enough for me, right? Or if Cal Newport and Malcolm Gladwell and Adam Grant all say this book is good, dude, I'm doing it, because those guys, I have built a level of trust and a level of relationship with them by reading their books that I trust the opinions that they have. So that is number 4, is pay attention to who is writing the blurbs. That is one of the biggest ways that I find great new books that I know I'm going to love. Whether I fully agree with them or whether it's because I disagree with them and they help refine my thinking, that doesn't matter nearly as much as, is this a book that will make me better by reading it? So pay attention to who writes the blurbs, okay? And finally, the last thing that you want to do, and the way that I would state this rule is never follow the crowd unless they're right, okay? What I mean by that is that most of the time, the bestseller lists and the Goodreads Choice Awards things and all these, most of the time, I find that those books do not live up to the hype. I read them and I'm like, wow, people need to read better books, because if you literally think that this was the best novel that came out in this entire year, oh, bless your heart. Like you just need to read better books, right? And so I tend to avoid I tend to be very circumspect of bestseller lists and 10 gajillion great reviews on Amazon. Again, it goes back to that relationship thing. I don't really care that some random Joe Smo is like, this is the greatest novel ever written, right? I care if someone who I deeply respect say, this is the greatest novel ever written. But there are times where the crowd is right. And my favorite example of this is The Way of Kings. I put off reading this book for so long, solely because I would look on Amazon and I would look on Goodreads, and this book has like 250,000 reviews. and it has an average of 5 stars. And I'm just like, yep, I don't believe it. There's no way it's that hype. There's no way it's that good. Nothing is actually that good, right? I finally delved into it and read it, and this is one of my favorite series of all time. Every book is 5 stars, just unbelievably good, right? So this is one of those books. There's another one, All the Light We Cannot See, won a Pulitzer Prize. Everybody was all freaking out about that. I was like, there's no way it's that good. It's actually that good. So even though the goal is to be very circumspect and very, like, you want to read better than the mass of people. We'll just put that out there right now. You want to read better than the average person, right? But sometimes the majority is correct. And so if you put these other pieces into play and you pay attention to what other book lovers are saying and you read a bunch of the same author and really learn what good writing sounds like, and you read classics and you understand what timeless books are made of and what books that really last and that impact the world are made of, and then you pay attention to who is blurbing and talking about these things, then you can get to that final step where you can look at something that is on the bestseller lists and that everybody's raging about, and you can have more discernment to know, okay, I think I want to give that a shot. Because that's what happened. I finally was like, there's enough going for this that I'm going to give it a shot, because maybe this is one of the exceptions where the crowd is right? And then by doing that, I end up finding one of my favorite series of all time, bar none. And I'm incredibly, I can't even imagine my life without having read The Way of Kings. So never follow the crowd unless they're right. All right, I hope that helps. If you take those tips and you start to work them out in that order, you will slowly start to find that you just more and more, every book you read is like, oh, that was so worth it, so worth it, so worth it. And you're always going to have exceptions of ones that you're just like, wow, that was a swing and a miss, man. It just, woof, that was not good. But overall, you will start to up the quality of the books that you put on your to-read shelf, and that will up the quality of your thinking, of your living, of your morals, of everything. The better books you read, the better human you can become, right? So I hope this helps. If you like it, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you're subscribed. I've got more videos coming out all the time, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.